Hello, welcome to the Bold Business Podcast, hosting It's Your Business. And we have three consultants of various disciplines that come together on It's Your Business to talk about what it means to be bold, what it means to be proactive, and what it means to just do the best work we can right now amidst whatever else is or isn't going on in our life, whatever we have control over and whatever we don't have control over. This is your source for navigating today's ever-evolving business landscape. I'm your host, Jess Duell, and we are going to get real here, really real here, with me and the panel with me alongside me. So right now I'm going to do quick introductions of each of us. Christy, say hello and who you are.
Christy Maxfield, Purpose First Advisors. We work with growth-oriented business owners who want to plan with the end in mind.
Dean
Barta at Barta Business Group. We're a group of fractional CFOs that work with small businesses to and nonprofits to help them grow and thrive, especially in 2025.
And at Red Direction, I and my team are working with the real reality of doing more with less, and how do we turn that into that positive? How do we remain relevant and create our own future today, right now? And here we go with the three of us. Get ready, jump in. We're going to go deep into understanding. We're going to go deep into this topic. And what are we actually talking about today? We're actually talking about alignment. We're talking about the importance of what does it mean to actually be aligned, because the game of business is changing. Systems can be the same, processes can be the same, approaches can be the same, but the game is changing. Our turbulent market is demanding more from us than agility. We need unified, ownership-driven leadership. So this stark choice that we face today, why you're here, why you're listening, is because we want to outmaneuver so we're not outmaneuvered and left behind. That is our why now here. And we broke this down into three parts. The three parts are: how do we face what we're avoiding or ignoring? And actually, really, can we claim the fact we're ignoring or avoiding? Number two, the second part of the program will be about the skills necessary to stay aligned during uncertain times. And the third section will be about confrontation. Confrontation is necessary and it can be healthy because in today's landscape, it is no longer optional. So I'm really excited. How about you, Dean? How about you, Christy?
Let's get it on.
Always.
Here we go. So part one, we're going to jump right in and we're talking about what are we avoiding and what are we ignoring. Christy, I know this is something you're going to lead us in discussion about.
Yes. So there's rarely an organization that isn't ignoring something that's not working. Right. So you're not alone. I think that's the first thing is you're not alone. There are always parts of our business that we'd rather not deal with, rather not see. We really wish the problem was somewhere else. But if you're consistently not getting the results you want, there's probably something you're ignoring or something that you're trying to avoid, hoping it will resolve itself. You know, that magical time in the future where you'll be have lots of time to devote to whatever it is you're going to do. And then in that magical time, all your obstacles will be removed and you can do it. That magical time is no more real than the magical time when the team is going to realize that it's working at cross purposes and figure out how to move forward, or that one team member who really isn't a good fit for the team for a variety of reasons is going to suddenly get on board and start making a big impact. So I think what you really need to do is identify what are we probably not dealing with that is creating the impediment to us getting the results we want. Because we've probably already gone through the list of things that we think are keeping us from success, and whatever changes or adjustments we're making there still aren't yielding results. How about you guys? What do you usually, what are the telltale signs that somebody's avoiding something?
Well, I mean, I look at it as an organization is if you don't have an awareness as a business owner of where those areas are, just look at where people are complaining the most about, whether you are yourself or a team member is, or a client is complaining about. And that's the areas of improvement that need to be addressed. And I mean, or the items that keep you up at night, those are the areas that need to be addressed. And they don't get solved magically on their own. There's certainly a time period to be patient, but if they're a persistent, let's say squeaky wheel, then it has to be addressed. And but to me, that's how I identify how what are the ones that need the most attention to.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the meetings that I've been in over the last few weeks. And one of the things that comes out that stands out to me are the meetings with the CEOs and executive managers, executive leadership team members that sit with me one-on-one. And they say things like, I can't let it go at night because so-and-so did such and such. I can't let it go because I thought we were going to make progress today and all this other stuff happened and it feels like we went backward. I thought this and that happened. So that particular conversation, whether it's regarding a person, whether it's regarding a thing, whether it's regarding the schedule, hey, that would be my first clue that there's something going on to say, well, what is it? And where is it? Is it happening at a value level, like the way we do our work here and our business values and how they're defined and show up? Or is it how we're adding value? Is there something in our value proposition that no longer is working and our clients are starting to make different decisions, but we haven't been able to articulate it yet? Or is it we're just all overwhelmed and have none of us had a break? And so we're in that place where we're all just nitpicky with each other because it's not like, it's like those people that come to your house and stay a couple days too long. You know it. You know when they stay too long and you're like, could you please go? When that happens in our office space, when that happens with our teams, that just means we've been running too high too long.
Yeah. I actually thought what you were going to say, Jess, was the meetings where we talk about the same thing over and over and over again, because I think that's also one of the signs that we're either avoiding something or ignoring something, but in particular that we're not aligned. That the problem isn't that we don't have the right tool. The problem isn't that we haven't trained people well. That because we've probably worked through those assumptions. Like we've tested the process, we've tested the message, we've tested the capabilities of the team and things like that, and it's still not working. So where are we misaligned? And that speaks to one of the, well, both. I mean, who's complaining was Dean's thing. So who continues to be unhappy with what the end result is and why? And then who's making decisions that as the leader of the organization leave you thinking, what were they thinking? Right. And that to me is the signal of we're not on the same page. We think we're on the same page. We might be using the same words, but we're not actually talking about the same thing. And even when we say we're on the same page, something happens between being on the same page together in the room and what actually gets executed. And that those things are it's hard to make any headway if we can't then have frank conversations about where the disconnect is happening. Like we all agreed we were going to do X, Y, and Z. And then at the end of the week, it wasn't done. We can have lots of excuses, but more importantly, what is the fundamental disagreement that's occurring that's keeping us from doing what we need to do?
I like to write down all of those excuses. Okay, cool. Let's get them on a board. Let's get them on a piece of paper. Let's get them on a screen that we can all see. And you know why? Because I'll bet you there's some overlap. And when we see the same thing from more than one person, aha, we have competing priorities. Or aha, we're actually not focused on what we want to be. So why not? And it becomes clearer when all of that can be put out into the open. So maybe there's got to be some sports analogy here that we could use for stopping everything and going, this is worth 15 minutes of our time. Let's just in this case, excuses, gripes, whatever on a board, and how many are the same, and how many of us are feeling that way.
Yeah, I'm struggling with sports analogies. One, because I didn't play that many team sports and don't watch that many team sports. But I'm like thinking one of the things that's very clear is in sports is, so who's the team captain? Mm-hmm. Who's the coach? Mm-hmm. Who's calling the shots, right? And in the elite sports arena, you don't get there unless you've demonstrated along the way that whether you like the call that was made on the field or not, you're willing to execute your part in the plan, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. You know, the running back's not stopping mid-play going, I didn't want to go that way. I didn't want to go that way. You should have called a different play. Yeah. Right. Like whether they're thinking that or not, I'm sure there are days where they're like, I can't believe we're running this play right now. But they know what their part is, and they train for that part, and they practice for that part. And they've had that debate off the playing field about, you know, when do we use this kind of play and how do we do it and what does it take to execute it? But they are not leaving the huddle and going, I know he wants me to run down and deep, but I'm going to run. I've decided I'm just going to stay here right now.
Hey, you know what, though? There are times that coaches will expect something or the way a play has done, and somebody that's on in the group will just do something totally different. And everybody is surprised. And there's usually a reason for that, too, which is another good reason to whatever we want to name it here for our purposes. It's time to take a quick break, and we need to just sync up just to recognize we're out of sync. Sometimes that's as little as we need.
Yeah.
Well, that's called a timeout.
I was going to say, but even in a timeout, it's like, I'm going to use the timeout to go like, get your stuff together, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's you take a timeout to sometimes, well, you could use the word realign, but some people chew their ass out or whatever, but or remind them that, hey, we discussed this play. We this is what you need to do, you know, and if you can't execute it, I will find someone, I'll pull someone off the bench who can execute it. Mm-hmm. But you know, it goes back to what we were talking about, is that you could discuss it, but really the results are, you know, in the actions, or the lack of results are in the lack of action. Mm-hmm. So, you know, but you know, coming to the timeout, that's where, you know, during any professional sport or whatever, you know, they're not going to wait till the third period or fourth quarter or whatever, you know, sport it might be. You know, a lot of times, you know, and you see it's frustrating, but teams will do it sometimes in the first 5 minutes of a game. And because they don't want to be dealing with those problems later on in the game, when it, you know, when it really is more on the line, you got to jump in and correct. So,
you know, it's making me think of market shifts, right? I mean, our premise of our conversation is how the world is changing, and it's changing fast, and we have to do more and be more than just agile and be able to flex and adapt. We have to be making change as we go. And I think that there's an element of, can we get real? Can we face up to the strength of our internal business instinct? And have we been leveraging every single person's developing, honed, practiced business instinct, or have we been running in many different directions? And going back to that cause for a timeout, I'm all about that, because if we can't get true and get to a truth about what the reality is of our market today, what our customers want today, their changing expectations right now, we have the opportunity to miss it all together and then be behind. And it behooves us to claim it, own the fact we don't know, and figure out what information we need, figure out what expertise we have, figure out what energy and resources we have, so that we can figure out a unified way forward. And I would say market shifts are our biggest opportunity that will either hold us back or give us that leg up in 24 months from now.
And if someone's ignoring them on your team, is choosing to do things aligned with the strategy you've discussed and decided upon, because they don't agree that that's the right response to the shift, the market shift,
Mm-hmm.
then that has to be discussed. And I think the thing we tend to avoid is having what we would call a hard discussion or a tough
Mm-hmm.
conversation about the fact that someone isn't doing what they said they would do. Someone has said they've committed to doing XYZ, but their actions don't reflect that.
Mm.
And in a volatile, rapidly changing, uncertain environment, if we all agree that we need to move fast and move quickly and break a few things along the way, but fundamentally stay true to 4 key principles, and someone in that room says yes, but then slow rolls their part of it because they don't actually want to move fast and they don't want to break anything, and they're afraid to make decisions based on imperfect information, then they are going to sabotage what's going on because of their own fear, not because they don't want the company to be successful, but their fear and uncertainty is influencing their decisions and impacting how the organization is going to move forward. And when things are volatile and uncertain, anything you've sort of overlooked of like, oh, well, Christy sort of takes things in her own time. It takes her a little while to get on board, but once she's on board, she does a great job. Well, that might be something you've been avoiding or ignoring because it didn't cause too much harm. And even though it's annoying to you, it didn't necessarily impact the top or bottom line. But now that's going to impact the top or bottom line. And it's a waste of resources.
Mm-hmm. I had a business that fell apart because of that. Actually, myself and another person started a business. we were in it. We had clients lined up. We had taken money. We had done all of this amazing pre-work, and we were ready to hit the ground running. And then what happened? Sabotage. And it was out of fear. And all of these little things of that person's insecurity showed up in our partnership, and it made me insecure. So my sabotage showed up, and we were just a spiraling hot mess. And in the end, it turned out we needed to shelve the whole thing, give the money back, and tell the clients, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go find somebody else.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it ended very badly. And it wasn't because we couldn't see it. It was because we couldn't bridge it. And so that was something I wish I had known me back then, or Christy or Dean back then, because anybody outside of that partnership could have provided some sort of a guiding light, a place with which we could remember why we came together, where we are aligned, and then figure out how to face our biggest fears that come with starting a company. And I have to tell you, I know people talk about the biggest reason businesses fail is cash flow problems, but let me just be real. I think it's heart and head problems in ourselves and how they align or don't align with the partners in our business.
Well, and I'll mention too, and see if this resonates with you all too, is before you even recognize is in Jess, I know I can talk about it from a partnership standpoint, but you can too, is you would have done things differently even before getting into the partnership.
Correct.
So you're backing up the history timeline. So we would have done things differently, and it could be even in an employee situation. I wish I would have asked this employee this, and this, because it wasn't until they were in the job that I found out they're not capable of doing this particular job, whether it's a skill set or an attitude about it, or, if it's a position that takes someone who can handle, say, confrontation, but they're afraid of confrontation, that's not a good fit. So really, backing that up but it's also a learning, right? Because, once any of us have made that mistake, guess what? The next time we hire a person, we're going to ask those other questions or bring up these scenarios, or we look at joining a partnership, we're going to say, okay, we learned this from the other partnership, and how can let's make sure those questions are answered before we even get into the partnership. So so you don't even get to that, misalignment, issue in the first place.
Yeah, we've moved into this part one. Where are we going? Are we avoiding and ignoring things to get to where we're going? And we've started to move into this second piece, the how do you stay aligned during these times of uncertainty, high pressure, fast movement, and what skills and tools do we need? And I think that that's an interest. And I appreciate both of these stories because, Dean, you're right. Doing it different, we can always do it different the next time. But boy, hindsight really does bring a value set of what do we like, what do we not like, and can we identify those gaps early? And it's interesting because I'm going to put it in this, we can talk about ourselves and we can put everything in relationship to self-awareness for ourselves and hoping that the people that we are in partnership with making these strategic decisions that are guiding employees forward and keeping this company relevant over time are doing their inner work also. And I'm going to set all that and say, we can talk about that, and we do that a lot. I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to talk about the way we do our business, like the actual tactical day-to-day stuff for a few minutes. And this is going to be whatever technology we're using, whatever data we're getting, whatever dashboards we have going on. This is how we've chosen to communicate. And if we have been ignoring something, or if we have been avoiding something, it means our data has not given us the information we need to face it. So out of sight, out of mind, which is not good from a strategic perspective. But also, let's just talk about the processes we use, the methodologies that we may have to create a cadence, or systems and technologies that we've chosen. Are we fully utilizing them? Are they starting to get obsolete? Do they actually help us set our customer expectations? And if we don't have the things in place to recognize, hey, it's time to ask this question, which, by the way, I'm a big believer in planning with the end in mind. I know that that's one of the 7 habits of highly successful people's goal setting. I believe that that is very important for implementing a tool. A tool has an end life. A process has an end life. A methodology that we use in our business will have an end life. It'll hit a ceiling that we can't break through unless we change, and we change it along with us. And so when I think about this, and I think about the amount of data we have, and I think about the amount of frontline from wherever we are doing our work out in the world and internally, how do we tap into that? And that is so important from a gains perspective. It is so important from understanding exactly where we are to choose, because it would be great to choose 5 things to change all at once. It doesn't matter how big or how little you are. 5 things is a lot to change all at once. So what's one thing that can be focused on that improves the most? And we can only do that if we have data, if we know our numbers, if we understand what's important to the success of our business and what those indicators are, and can we measure them? Or how might we understand the output of other measurements telling us that something is on track or not? All it does is develop our business instinct. Because everything we're talking about tactically and practically right now comes from clues that we thought would be in place that we're looking for. We planned for that with our hearts and our guts and our, well, all of them, heart, gut, brain, right? We also recognize that other things will show up in the world that we can and cannot control that may go, oh, this is actually something we didn't think of, but the output, the results are enough that we need to take a closer look. Does our data help us answer that problem? Does our data help us understand how much do we influence this challenge that has shown up, this opportunity that has shown up? And that takes fortitude. And it's more than discernment. It's more than everything else. It is fortitude every single day to go, I know there's going to be a challenge today. I know we were already working on this challenge or that challenge. And so how do we keep everybody moving together? And that's where these strategic, higher level conversations come in, because that long-term growth is going to happen only with our intention in those small strategic times where we come together and work and solve these bigger problems. Do we have the right combination of things to get that information?
I agree with you. And
okay,
I have a very recent experience where the data was available, but the story being told about the data wasn't helpful.
Fair.
So, when I got the financial statements, I was like, your story doesn't make sense to me based on what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
right? Your story is we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to be able to take care of X. We're going to be able to take care of Y. And even if nothing else changes, I'll be okay. The business will be okay. And I was like, the data is not telling me that story. The data has me concerned. So where is the story coming from? And what data are you using? And it really wasn't until we looked at the data together and I said, this is what I am seeing.
Yep.
And if you only have advisors who reinforce your desired reality and don't challenge the data or the story you're telling about the data, in this particular case, somebody was able to tell a less than accurate narrative for a very long time and made decisions based on that narrative that they are now feeling some way about. Right?
Yeah, I have a story about that too, Christy.
Well, good. I mean, it's not good because it means somebody was living in a fantasy land where those numbers did things that, like, the math was not mathing for me. And I was just like, I don't know how you get this ending to this story when these numbers are telling me this, right? And I just kept saying, there must just be something I don't know, right? Like, there just must be something I don't know. But I think what's really turned out is they told a story and their other advisors reinforced the story, rather than really saying, what if this is actually the narrative that's
still wrong? Yep. Normalizing wrong is still wrong. You're absolutely right, Christy. And there's something to be said for that. And I know, and so here's my hands-on example. Reports every single month. There's a specific amount off every single month between two different systems running the same reports. Came out of nowhere. And you'd think if it was an error, it would change every month or be variable. It never was. And finally, I'm like, hello, this is not quite right. We have to figure out why we have two different systems creating this data, and we are off the same amount to the cent to get to the percentage amount off. Like point whatever cents, not even dollars. We're talking about pennies on the dollar here. And lots of time went by and lots of pushing went back. I'm like, I don't know the systems. Help me understand. Walk through this. Turns out one of the systems was adjusted. Turns out there was theft going on. And without that secondary backup system, embezzlement would have never been found. And it would have been without a push that this is wrong. Those two systems would have just been like, well, they're just enough different. This is our acceptable. And it could have become normal.
Exactly.
This is the point where, and we're talking about numbers here. So how can we speak up? How can we stick with it? Because when we know in our gut or our heart or our mind and nobody listens, it doesn't mean we're a whistleblower necessarily. It doesn't mean anything. It means something's out of alignment. And if we don't get it right, there's going to be other ripples down the road that are a problem.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. And it's, engagement, that people have. And whether I've been in meetings before where, that people just, that looks good. And they're not really engaging with it. And you had a great example, Jess, is that, and you did too, Christy, is someone's got to stand up and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me. And those are the people that are engaged. And so I look for the level of engagement, and I seek out, if you will, dissent or hey, have you looked at it from this direction? Because, I'm not quite understanding. Some people are just afraid to ask that question, or they, we've already been in a meeting for 45 minutes. Do I want to really make this a longer meeting by asking this question? But you do it because, that's the level of engagement that I demand, working with people. So.
But it goes back to what Jess said earlier, is like, you have to get really true about what is reality, right? So if we're having a collective psychosis where we're all buying the story, then there needs to be somebody who's going to interrupt that, and that's the role an outside advisor can play, doesn't always play, but definitely can play. And I also think a red flag can be when someone says, well, the system can't possibly do that. Like it can't be happening. Because I don't know about you, but I've had things where I'm like, I am literally experiencing it doing X and you're telling me it's impossible for X to happen. But X has happened, not it is happening and happened. And that thing you're telling me is impossible is actually occurring. So whatever we need to do to figure out the how and the why, and then go farther. But I think it's really easy a lot of times to, especially if we think the number is inconsequential or relatively small in the grand scheme of things. But it's these moments where the uncertainty is so high and the business patterns have changed, the buying patterns have changed so dramatically, and what people are willing to invest in or not invest in has changed so radically, where the tolerances have to get even tighter, and the alignment of everyone around the table on what's important, what does success look like, how are we measuring it, really has to be airtight.
I agree. And I'm thinking, as I'm listening to both of you, about the language we use internally. The way we do our work here comes with our own jargon. We use stuff at Red Direction in our vocabulary that probably other businesses do not use to describe the exact same thing. And I think that intentionally working with those words and understanding, where did we create our own jargon, and are we buying into something that is true, or did we create this and are we somehow overlooking the opportunity to have clues for change? And in fact, in this case, I'm going to say, not just to get back in alignment and do and avoid failure or challenges, because we're going to continue to have those. I'm saying, when we challenge our vocabulary, when we make sure we understand the words we're using and what they actually mean, we can proactively change as well and innovate and create, because we're able to better understand the limits that we have set. Every mission, it's a set of limits. Here's what we do and here's what we don't do. The way we set up expectations with our customers, here's what we will and here's what we won't do. We have boundaries and we have limits everywhere. This is how much money we have. This is how much energy we have. This is how much capacity our technology can support. Whatever it is, there's a limit out there. So how do we leverage that in a positive way? And we can do that by making sure that internally we just don't have jargon going on that we've bought into our own hype, for example, I guess would be the right way to say that.
And we internally don't have things that we've turned a blind eye to, because oftentimes the person who's least likely to adopt the new process or technology is the owner. And everybody says, well, we all do this. Well, except for Tom. Right. And it's like, well, if Tom doesn't do it, then how is everybody doing it? And why? I mean, I know he's the owner and I know he doesn't want to adopt this new thing, but if we've decided that this is fundamental to how we run our business and run it well, then Tom doesn't get a pass. Like maybe Tom gets assistance from somebody to do it, but Tom doesn't get a pass. And so those kinds of things, I think, where we look and there's like, oh yeah, we do that, but whoever it is isn't held to the same standard. And what I keep hearing in all of our musings on this is there's a set expectation. There has to be literally a verbal commitment. Are we committed to doing X to achieve Y? Yes or no? And then accountability. Because, you know, if my Tom said the expectation is everyone will use this and he's committed to using it too, and then he doesn't use it, then it's very hard for me to make other team members who might be having some feelings about a new process or technology that they don't particularly want to adopt either, if there's these exceptions to the rule. So that commitment piece is really, I'm finding it showing up in so much of my work, of just how important it is to the relationships we commit to, the jargon, like you said, what language are we using, what processes are we using, what are we committed to? Are we committed to each other? Are we committed to the company, committed to the mission, committed to the project, committed to the client? And each day we're making a choice whether or not to be committed, and our leaders are making choices and their teams are making choices. So how do we make sure they're making the right choices to do the right work at the right time?
You know, that makes me think about So what is something practical? I was thinking there's got to be something that I have done with a company that would be useful here in this conversation to take all this talk and put it into practice in a way. I'm going to stick with that positive. I'm going to stick with we can be more creative when we embrace the reality of the situation. So in the event of understanding how do we foster creativity? How do we keep the momentum going? How do we have the energy and the ability to have enough interest to put time and work into something that must change or to stay on top of the things that we are illuminating and looking for? I would say, why not do a past future alignment workshop? And this is all about momentum in a company. This is about the small wins. So if every single person on a team, in a department, in the company, however you want to structure it, talks about just the last quarter and they spend a little bit of time and they write down what do they consider their wins. We now have a baseline. What would be really cool are the people in the same department. Do they share the same wins with each other? If not, opportunity to align closer. If so, great momentum already, because you have more people working in the same direction already. This is so important for us to know as the strategic decision makers, how we're going to do it. What are the adjustments we are going to make? Will they stick? Because everything we do, we want to keep the momentum and build it. So how do we get people to see that together that they have achieved some similar wins and use that momentum together, in addition to individually understanding and claiming, I did that. I was part of this win. Because when we're looking at those wins, it does allow us to go, hey, cool. I'm more excited to try something else. It's less scary to do something unknown because I know I've done great stuff before and succeeded. So I want to think about that just a little bit, because now you can take all that data. It's outside of the numbers, but it's important data nonetheless in how and where is the momentum coming from. So as you are making decisions, as choices are made, as communication occurs, we can leverage where the momentum already is and use that to our collective advantage to stay interested, to stay engaged, and to keep moving forward, especially if we don't know when it's going to get hard, but we know it will get hard because we have challenges all the time. Maybe just not all at once.
Well, and I'll throw another sports analogy in there. Since,
cool.
Well, it's let's say it's a football team that, their passing game is being shut down. So what they do is they go to the running game because they know they're better at that. And it's building, okay, we made the first down, or we made, and they're moving down the field and they're progressing and building off of them, like you said, momentum. And that's a way to, get past the impasse that, oh gosh, we did these 3 pass plays and it just failed. And because football is like, sometimes you run it enough, then the defense is now defending against the run, then the pass play can set up the success for the pass play. So, but that can happen in business too, is like, hey, let's build off the momentum, and then we might be able to incorporate that first strategy that was not working before later on. But it's feeling out the energy, because what's worse is when a team just gets discouraged, and there's no success to build upon.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. I'm going to do the break right now. Hey, everybody, you're listening to It's Your Business, hosted by the Bold Business Podcast. And here you go. This is the important thing to remember and take away today, that we're getting real about what to do. We're not only talking about, of course, ourselves, but how do we show up as a team? How do we make these decisions when other people are looking to us to help them remove their obstacles and remind them where we're going and what we're doing, and have answers we may not actually have. And this conversation today about what are we avoiding, and are we hoping things are miraculously going to happen for us, is because today's market landscape is volatile. There are a lot of things that are influencing our future success that are going to depend on what we're working with today. So this landscape is more important to be open to change, anticipate that change, and know that what you're doing today to what we've been talking about how do we know we're avoiding it, and what can we do about it, and what are the things we can look at internally to check ourselves, is what we have been talking about. Now, we're going to let's reintroduce ourselves, everybody.
Hi, Christy Maxfield with Purpose First Advisors. We work with owners who want to grow their business with the end in mind.
Dean Barta at Barta Business Group. We're a group of fractional CFOs helping out small businesses and nonprofits to grow and thrive.
And I'm Jess Duell, and I'm excited to be here with you representing Red Direction, where we are working with strategic change that creates lasting results, so businesses that want to stay in business, which is most of us, actually do. All right. And those of you who are listening, those of you who are watching, it is time, wherever you are listening and watching, subscribe so you can see more programs like this just announced to you as they happen. We will be making sure that you have more It's Your Business to come as well. Oh, I'm going to say one other thing, right, Dean and Christy? And this will be, you might know somebody who needs this today. Please send it to them. That is incredibly important, because if nothing else, if we can provide a way forward and a light in the tunnel of a place that feels really foggy right now or really dark right now, that is what we want to do. And that's why we're having these conversations, to normalize them, to make sure we recognize it's more than follow the steps. It's more than understand the cadence of our methodology. It's more than how do we know when they're done working with us or we're done working with them. These are the things that we think about and how we show up.
Excellent. So we've been talking about avoiding reality, like folks are avoiding reality and pretending like things aren't happening and hoping that magical things will happen. And that most of the time that's because there's a level of fear about what it means to hold people accountable, or what it means to face the fact that people aren't aligned. I'm curious just what, Dean and Jess, what have your experiences been with actually surfacing the truth?
Well, I view it as, someone's got to have the intestinal fortitude to just bring it up and just, call it out. And it results, it's confrontation, which not a lot of people are, either they confront in the wrong way or they don't confront. I have, I've learned different ways of confrontation over the years, and probably I have a propensity more to, I'm not afraid of confrontation. Let's just put it at that. And, so I've learned actually to back off a little bit because I, can be, results driven right now, and I've stepped right over the top of people's heads by doing it. So now you may have a team that responds that way. Okay, that that you come in and you're like, hey, things have got to change, or we're changing personnel. That in certain environments, that's, you got to really depends on the level of confrontation, and the type of confrontation depends on your team. And because, you may have some people that will just basically freeze if they're confronted like that. So it's really being in touch with what is the motivating factors and how to effectively, because the reason for the confrontation is to move you into a better direction, right? Or move us from, this stopped point that we're at. And keeping that in mind is what's the approach, and sometimes that's like take a breath or two before, moving forward, and to get to the desired result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I find often that if we can start the conversation with, are we in agreement that we all want X, Y, and Z to be true? So, that shared consensus on what we're trying to accomplish. And then can we state the facts around that? And can we keep it as factual as possible? Excuses tend to take us away from facts, but if we can just agree on the facts of the situation, like Christy agreed to do X and Christy didn't do X, that's a fact, right? Why Christy didn't do that can go into a variety of different ways. And the thing we're most concerned about is she committed to not having the same thing happen again in the future? And then asking better questions. I find that my job is to learn how to ask better and better questions so that the facts are evident and we don't have to, it's not about pulling people along as much as it is about asking them questions where they themselves have to answer in a way that makes it clear that things need to change.
I agree with that wholly. And there's actually, some people realize this, some people don't, but if anyone asks a why question, that's actually, a why question is a lot more confrontational than asking a what or a how question. So here's an example is, why did you not get this done? Is different than what are the aspects that you encountered that you didn't get this done? Or how could you have handled this differently to have the outcomes that we wanted? You can see what the different tone of that is. And so it's, like Christy was saying, it's how you ask the questions and to get to where you desired, once again, get to the desired result.
A question I always ask at the end of a facilitated discussion where I'm brought in specifically to have disagreement or put everything out on the table in a safe space where we can avoid, there's a word I'm looking for, taking it personally. There's a better word for it than that, but whatever, taking it personally. And I will tell you that I recognize where there are two things that come up. And the first is that question, which is what has not been said that is really on your heart about this. Mm-hmm. And see what happens after whatever debate, after whatever conversation is coming to a close. Leave time at the end to ask that question. What else hasn't been said that you want to say about this? And that leads into the second piece, which is now we have all of the things here. We can actually take what everybody has said in whatever form, and we can lay that decision-making process over the top of it with our business goals for now and for the future in place, with our mission in place, with our strengths analysis, opportunities and threats analysis, or whatever combination of reports that you want to use to make that decision. Because we've got all the information and all the heads out, we can layer on what we have tool-wise within our organization, and then a decision can be made. And it's made from a place of it doesn't matter whose idea came out on top. It matters that the right idea came out of placing what was most important to our business's success and the design that we have put into place for our priorities right now in place to find that next best step. Once you've got that confrontation in place and put it to good use, use it as momentum and fuel.
I really like the idea of asking, what is on your heart that hasn't been said yet, because I think there is actually a space for what I would call clearing the air meetings. Yes. To actually talk about the feelings that the thing has produced, right? That there's this idea I've been introduced to, that there's the thing we have to talk about. Christy, you're not or Tom, you're not using the system, man, right? Like that's the thing that brought us in the room. That's the problem to be solved. But there's lots of feelings that are going on around that. There's lots of assumptions that are going on around that. And, that might be because Tom feels like he can't adopt that technology as quickly as needed, and that will somehow sideline him or diminish his ability to be the leader he wants to be, or his authority and his capability to lead the team. Like that's not a, you need to use the tool. That's a, who am I and what is my identity and how does it making this change impact me in this very personal way that I may not even be able to put words to. But clearing the air to say, is there anything that hasn't been said that needs to be said? Is there anything that if you leave this room, you're going to feel like folks won't fully understand what it is that you're asking of them or needing from them to be successful? Mm-hmm. It requires an extraordinary level of vulnerability, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't aspire to it.
Totally. Yeah. It's interesting because I think about, it also brings up other concerns that can help us understand how some of these pieces seem to fit together on the surface, yet might actually fit together differently than we've given credit or designed for. That's better than we could have imagined. And I think that that's something that we forget sometimes, and it makes me think, where can we plan on having confrontation that's healthy with and tools that we can use to manage disagreement, because we have to face things we've been ignoring, and what skills we can lean into or develop to help us get there. And here are some trends that came up for me in preparation. Like, all of this work is not, it can be the day-to-day, but let's talk about this. Let's talk about how are we automating our businesses using AI? Not ChatGPT as the language learning model, because that's cool and everything, but the next level of that, of automation in our organizations, of AI as tools as they become available. Another one that came up for me was that we now have technology to have hyper personalization at scale. We can be a one-person show and have however many clients we're going to have, and they can each have their own different experience with technology. That's mind-boggling to me. That's actually something that's scary to me, and it's kind of cool and exciting at the same time. Like, ooh, I just got to the top of the roller coaster. I guess I did get on this ride. Here we go. It's going to be super fun. And we have to, and then we're talking about, well, what is our approach to technology? The concept of a tech stack is officially changing, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the next 24 months. Just to be aware of, we have all these things we can plug in. It's easier to plug in and plug out. So what can we use, and how do we get to our goals to support that that personalization at scale, that integration of AI in whatever forms start to come out that help us do what we do best as much as we can? Do you have other places, other trends that matter that our discussion can help with, because it's added on to the pressure of what's coming?
Well, from where I sit, because I do a lot of succession and exit planning work, is that this will exasperate what we sometimes perceive as generational challenges or conflicts about technology adoption. And it's going to happen. I have 30-year-olds who aren't sure how to integrate AI into their business, right? That there's a trepidation and a learning curve that I don't think they would have anticipated at the beginning of their career if you had told them, you're gonna drag your feet on adopting some new tech, right? And I think that the things we have to look for in our future generation and change and train that generation to be able to lead the businesses of the future look different than the skill sets a lot of us have been successful because of. And then there is, again, the identity piece. If this thing can now do this, create this output that I used to be able to create without it, then where is my value and where is my role and how am I contributing and what is creating impact and value? So I kind of look at it from the standpoint of, what is impeding the ability to adopt these things that make us more agile and nimble? What are the unspoken parts about what it means to me and who I am and the value I bring and where I fit in this organization and how I grow in this organization if these things are changing so rapidly, and where I might create impediments and be misaligned with the team out of that fear we talked about earlier, because I'm not even cognizant of how it's impacting the way I show up and what I'm excited about adopting or not adopting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've worked with organizations before where they wouldn't change an accounting system because they would lose their senior accounting person because she was flat out, if I have to work with a different system, I won't be here. And which is direct in conflict with what I would be doing, because I'm like, if I had an employee like that, I'd be like, well, you enjoy that time at a different employer, because that's not the attitude we have here. We're in growth mindset, and you're not going to hold this company hostage because you're not willing to change, and even though you're not willing to grow, and that's my approach. But this organization decided, well, they're a valuable enough person that they're going to be held behind, because I mean, this employee is basically holding them hostage, and not something that I, that I approve. But, every organization has to make that decision about those kind of people. So
it happens a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's being able to keep people who have been very loyal to the company, who have come up with the company, who have grown with the company, even if they personally haven't changed necessarily how they operate in the company, is a very common theme. And I think about the question we pose to ourselves is like, how do you realign when you realize you're out of alignment? And I think one of the things you have to be very cognizant of is that not everyone will make the journey with you.
Right.
And it's okay, because they were really important for a specific stage in the development of your business. And they simply may not be well suited to go the rest of the way with you. And it really does matter whether they want it, get it, and can do it. And if they can't do one of those three, then you're either going to invite them to leave, or they're going to make a choice to go somewhere else. And it's much for the deep caring that goes into trying to preserve a place for people, I think is what should drive a conversation about whether or not it's time to separate.
Right.
Rather than trying to make someone so uncomfortable that they won't leave, or bending to their will and refusing to make changes because they're going to sabotage that activity.
Well,
but it's hard. The people piece is hard.
Well, and I in that situation, the situation of an employee that's holding, I base it on, this is what the mission of the company is. It's not Dean's mission. It's the mission of the company. And that we as a management team decided this is where we're moving forward. So if you can't be in alignment with that, then yes, there's a separation has to happen. And as I've told, not too many employees, but I've like, if, I'd much rather have the employee make that decision to leave than if I have to make it, then it's difficult for two people.
Yep.
So, I encourage people, this is the mission of what our company is. If you're not in alignment, then, you're an adult, you can make that decision, because it'll be painful if I have to make it. And but that one way or another, we've got to have a complete in alignment team moving forward.
Yep. What's your biggest takeaway from today?
Always the hardest part of the show.
I know.
Biggest takeaway from today. I think something we didn't actually say explicitly we actually know what's holding us back. We know what's causing the challenges and impacting our ability to be nimble in a time that calls for us to be as flexible and adaptable as possible. And so if any of these things resonated with you, if when we said, what are you avoiding or ignoring, you felt like seen, like, this is your action call to examine those things, not turn away from those things, and find either the capacity within your organization or through your strategic advisors to actually deal with and face those things you're avoiding or ignoring.
My takeaway is, hey, don't be afraid to take that time out. And just, if you know that the team or organization is moving in a direction that isn't productive or, aligned with the goals, as a leader or a management team, you got to just say, well, stop, wait a minute. It's easier to realign now than if we're using the sports analogy in the fourth quarter, because we can do more and have more ability to align the team if we're doing it sooner, not being afraid of that confrontation, and to get the desired results you want.
Mm-hmm. I think my biggest takeaway was that it's really important to use your voice. Each of the points that we talked about today, it came down to, do we have the courage to use our own voice to ask the question, to point it out, to seek more information, to bring to the table? Because when we can accept that whether it feels off, senses off, the data shows it's off, the truth about market shifts are what are going to allow us to move forward successfully. And anything that's out of alignment today will show up when embracing something new that is considered with these other market shifts that are happening. Whatever our priorities are, how do we incorporate AI into that? Whatever our priorities are, do we have the right technology stack? Whatever our priorities are, how hyper local can we get and hyper customized, not only for our customers, but also maybe for employee engagement and experience as well. There are rippling effects that we can bring some of these other trends into our current priorities when we use our voice, when we are creative and thoughtful and say, hey, what if? What makes this? How come we do this? Is this the reality of what we have? And have those discussions. You are listening to It's Your Business with Dean Barta, Christy Maxfield, and myself, Jess Duell, and we will see you next time.